Hello, folks. This is going to be a two-part, well, ideally a two-part tutorial. I'll do the first section, which should cover pages, uh, let's see, pages WD 4-1 all the way to 4-29. So we're working on the Word Module 4, and this is for the Office 2019 or Office 365 class, and this exercise is kind of the capstone for our Word section. So this is the final chapter that we're going to complete with regard to Word. Um, at least for the CMAP 1680 or the CMAP 1200. If you are taking a different class, you may be completing some additional assignments here. So this is the document or the chapter that we're going to be working on. It's called Enhancing Page Layout and Design, and you can read through the explanation here. Definitely go to look at the pictures on the following pages just to be certain that you understand all of these details. So I have to be honest with you. I think that some of this activity in this assignment kind of borders on design, which is a different tool set. So be careful if you're trying to do really fancy design sorts of work, because that may get you into a little bit of trouble. There are tools that are designed to help you with that. Okay, enough of that. Let's get busy. Okay, so I'm going to move over onto page 4-4 because that's where the tan colored boxes begin. And I'm going to exit the book on your screen, and I'm going to use a paper copy of the textbook as well. So I'm on page 4-4, and in the tan color boxes there, they want us to find the 4-1, WD 4-1. So I'm going to open, I'm going to browse over here on the left, and I'm going to go find my documents. Again, I'm in the quick access. I'm going to go to the 1-4, Word 4, I'm in the module, and this is where we're going to find the 4-1.docx. Double click on that, and it wants us to save this as a different name. So this time it's going to be the newsletter. So I'm going to choose File, Save As. I'm going to put it into that same exact folder, and I'll call this Newsletter. I'm going to add my initials in there because I think that's helpful. And I'm going to save my work. And then my new name shows up here. You can tell exactly what I've got here, which is great. Okay, step 3 on page 4-4, go to the View tab in the ribbon. We're going to go to multiple pages. Some of this you could do differently, but this is the entire document. I think you're getting the picture that it's important to do a bird's eye view like this. Not to read your document, but to see your document, to be able to visualize it. And that's pretty key, especially in designing things. It needs to look good. I think, especially with design. So again, this is layout and design sort of stuff. There are other Microsoft tools that are designed for this. Um, I don't think lots of folks are going to be using the Microsoft tools for a profession, but it's nice to know how to do this in a pinch. Okay. Step 5 says compare the document to the completed newsletter as shown in the visual overview. Okay. And if you go to the visual overview, that's on pages 4-2 and 4-3. So that's giving you an idea about what this is going to look like. So this is your target. So imagine if you were shooting a bow and an arrow, and you were told to shoot it straight. The first question you're going to ask is, at what? So if you don't know what you're shooting at, it's very difficult to do a very good job at anything. So go to page 4-2, 4-3, make sure that you understand what that bullseye is going to look like. This is the bullseye. So go to page 4-2, 4-3, spend a few minutes and look at those pictures. You can see that there's multiple sections to this document, 4 to be exact. And you'll see that as we work through this. So pictures speak 1,000 words, and if I were going to do anything important, I'd sure as heck want to know what it is that I was expected to do. Otherwise, it's art. So art is more of a free-form way of creating things. But in this class, we're creating some very specific things. Okay, 4-5, page 4-5. We're going to go zoom in a little bit more so we can actually work with this. Make it so that you can work with it. Page 4-5, step 2 in the document. Click at the beginning of the third paragraph, which contains the heading, Happy Birthday. So, might not look like the third paragraph, but beginning of Happy Birthday. Okay, we want to go to Layout tab in the ribbon. Step 4 says click on the Breaks button. So Breaks is here. So Breaks. Insert page and section breaks. We want to choose a continuous section break this time. So we haven't done this before. So select these carefully because what you choose now is going to dramatically impact your ability to format this document. So when I did that, there was a very subtle change that occurred right here. There are some dots. Let me undo this and do that one more time. Keep your eyes open right here. When I go to Breaks, Continuous, you'll notice that things shift around a little bit. And there's a continuous section break that gets placed there. And that's because we had our insertion point located before the H in happy. So it's going to show up on the line before. And I don't know exactly why it shows up on the line before versus the line that you're on, but it doesn't really matter. That's just what it does. Okay, so we want to scroll down to page 2. You can read the rest of that there in step 4. Scroll down to page 2 and click on, at the beginning of the shaded paragraph, Classics in Audio Form. So that's right here. So we want to click. It's difficult to see my insertion point on this dark background, but I'm just before the C in Classics in Audio Form. And we want to do the exact same thing. Go to Breaks, go to Continuous. And this time you can see it more clearly up here. But this is the exact same thing we did in that previous step. So the next thing it says, step 6, click at the beginning of the next paragraph which contains Animal Farm. And we're going to insert another continuous section break. So Breaks, Continuous. So we don't want these to break to a new page because we want everything to stay where it is, but we want to have some section break capabilities for this. So now you can see that there's a section break here, there's a section break here, and if you go back up to the very beginning, there's a section break here. All right, flip over to page 4-6. We want to set custom margins for sections 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so before we do that, I want you to understand how to know which section is which. So this portion of your document is section 1, all the way down to this spot. So everything from Metropolitan Library System all the way through to the part that I have highlighted is section 1. Everything from Happy Birthday all the way to this spot is section 2. Classics in Audio Form is section 3. And section 4 is this list that shows up after the classics in audio form. So if you don't understand that, just make sure that you spend some time figuring this out, or you're going to be making changes in places where they're not needed. So we want to go to step 1, page 4-6, position the pointer anywhere in section 1. Okay? And then in the page setup group, so we're going to go to page setup group, and that's in layout. So make sure you're in layout, page setup. And this time we're going to go to margins, and we're going to go all the way down to custom margins. Click on custom, and we're going to change the left and the right margins to 0.75. And again, you don't need to put in all the extra quotes or anything like that. Left and right become 0.75, and then the instructions say to click OK, step 3. And so what happened was we made that just a little bit wider. So the margins are just a smidge narrower. On page 1, click anywhere in the Happy Birthday heading. You don't have to highlight it, but we want to position the pointer somewhere in there. Okay? And that means that we're in section 2. Step 5. It says page setup, click margins, custom, same place. Margins, custom. But this time we're going to make these really big left margin here. 2.5 is going to be the left margin. And you can leave the right margin where it is. Choose OK. And you can see there's this super big shift. So we want this white space because if you remember what that target looked like on pages 4.2 and 4.3, there we're going to put some stuff in there. So step 7 on page 4-6. Scroll down to page 2 and click in the shaded heading Classics in Audio Form. So this is our section 3 because here's section break, here's section break. So we want to be in the middle of there. And we're going to set the right margin, custom, to 0.75. So right margin, 0.75. And then choose OK. And I screwed up. I need to go back, and I need to change the left margin to be 0.75 as well, because then it would match. And you can kind of see that you can make mistakes and you can go back, but if you wait until the end and you try to fix these things, it may become dreadfully difficult. So best to kind of figure out your little mistakes, just like I did here. So on the ribbon, go to the View tab, and we want to go to multiple pages again. And now we can kind of see this bird's eye view here of how this whole thing is going to be looking. And this is actually going to be pretty decent. So you can see that I've got a bunch of white space here. I've got a bunch of white space here. And if I go back to that image, you can begin to see how that's going to ultimately look. Okay? So I'm going to save my work. Okay, saved. Move over to page 4.7. Format section 4 into 3 columns. Okay, so remember we've got section 1 is at the top of your document. Find that section break that's after the it's at the end of that little blue, the first blue bar there. So section 1 is here, section 2 is here, section 3 is the classics in audio form, and then section 4 is the list. So we want to click anywhere in the list of audio books at that very end. And then we're going to go to the Layout tab in the ribbon. We're going to find the Columns button. I'm going to click that arrow, and we want to make this 3. Okay, but we're going to go to more columns because we're going to change this ever so slightly. So if we go to the more columns, we can still choose 3 here. And look at the image on page 4-7. And it gives you a little bit of information here. Okay, so you can go to 3. You could set the actual column widths individually if you wanted to. You can apply it to the entire document or just to this section, or from that point forward. We've got a section break continuous, so that's what we're going to use. So we've got 3 columns, this section, and let's make sure there's nothing else we need to do. I'm reading through step 4 on pages 4-7 and 4-8. Okay. And you can see basically we've done everything it's asked us to do. So when we click OK, it's not going to be in 3 columns, but you can also see that there's kind of this blank space over here. The reason why we don't have this balanced out yet is because we'll finish that off later. Just try to make your document look like what's in the book and stay the course. So this looks great. I'm going to zoom in so I can actually work with this now. And going to make sure I'm in the Layout tab in the ribbon. I'm going to click at the beginning of the first audio book title, okay, beginning of Animal Farm, George Orwell. Press and hold the Shift key, and then click all the way at the end of your list so that you can get everything. Some people like to click and scroll to select whatever it is that works for you. We want to get all of that. So one of the things, just make sure that you're at the beginning of the A, press and hold the Shift key, and go to the right of the E. If you go too far to the right of the E, it might not work right, so get that. Okay. And then in the paragraph group, we want, this is step 3 on page 4-9, we want to click the paragraph dialog box launcher. So the dialog box launcher is right here. If you hover over top of that little arrow, it says paragraph settings. Okay, and that takes us to this dialog box. In the indentation section, so look around here, the indentation section is right here. We want to click the special arrow, which is here, and we want to make these hanging indents, but we don't want them to be the default of 0.5. We want them to be 0.2. Hanging indents of 0.2. We don't want them to be indented too much. You can look at the picture down at the bottom of page 4-9 and see what we're shooting for. Once you've got that set up properly, so special hanging by 2, okay, choose OK, and you can see that the second line of each entry gets indented slightly. So Animal Farm George Orwell is not indented because it fits on one line. Bleak House is not indented because everything fits on one line. Now, Brave New World by Aldous Huxley does get indented. Okay, and then just make sure yours looks similar to that picture in page 4-9. So now we're going to talk a little bit about special characters, images, blah, blah, blah. So if you flip over to page 10, it might be worth your while to look at the picture at the top of page 4-10. Many of you are used to using little smiley faces and stuff like that, so why don't you key in on that one? If you want to make a smiley face in Word, you can do that. And you would make that smiley face by typing a colon and a right parenthesis, and it would turn it into a smiley face. But there's lots of other things that you can do, and it's kind of showing you those in that little list there. I'll leave it at that. It's not as smart as your smartphone, but you could certainly, make it do that. Okay, bottom of page 4-10. We want to insert registered trademark symbol and look at other symbol dialog boxes. So step 1, use the navigator pane to find the listening to literature collection in the document. So we're going to press the control key, the F key, and I'm going to type listening to literature collection. All right, and there it is. And notice I spelled it with capital letters. That way it's going to take me to the right spot. So once I find that, click at the end. Step 2 says click at the end of the word collection. Okay, so before the period. And now, step 3, type very carefully, type a left parenthesis, and then the small letter R, and then a right parenthesis, and presto magico, you have a registered trademark symbol. So if you can't see that, let me zoom in a little bit. And let me do that one more time for you. So if I type in a left parenthesis, a lowercase r, and a right parenthesis, it automatically changes it into that registered trademark symbol. Okay, I'm going to zoom the other way so I'm not like blind guy. Okay, so we could do that with lots of different things, but you can use that little figure at the top of page 10 to help you figure out some of the really common ones. All right, so we want to go to the ribbon, click on File, then find the options. So depending upon your version of Word, yours might be slightly different, but we're looking for the File options. And now we're looking for the proofing section here on the left-hand side. And then we want to click on the autocorrect options button. So that should be at the top. It might be slightly different depending upon your version. But what we can do is you can control this. You can look through the list here of the various things that are automatically going to happen as you type. So those are changes that are going to get made. So this is like the autocorrect on your phone, except sometimes it's a little more difficult to fix those depending upon the type of phone you have, type of keyboard you're using on your phone. This is just how Word implements this. Okay, so you can see kind of what I'm seeing here on the picture on page 4-11. And it says, look at all these different sorts of things. Notice that there's an automatically use suggestions from the spelling checker. Okay, so you can turn that on, you could turn that off. Let's just cancel this. We don't want to fuss with this too much, but there's some other things you can do up here. I'm going to get out of that because I don't want to wreck that. All right, so I'm going to cancel this as well. Let's go to the Insert tab, excuse me, in the ribbon. And now in the Symbols group, so I'm on the Insert tab, I'm looking for the Symbols group. So there's Pages, Tables, Illustrations, Reuse, Add-ons, all the way at the right-hand side. If we go over here to Symbols, and you click on that, and then go down to the bottom of that with the omega symbol next to it. Click on the symbols, more symbols, and it brings you to a pane where you can see lots of other things here. Well, what you see is not actually what you're going to get because there's zillions of things in here that you can work with for symbols. And there's additionally, there's all these other fonts that you can use. So tons and tons and tons of stuff that you could fuss with here. You can also get into special characters, all sorts of stuff that you could use. If you don't want to figure out how to type it, you can just click on it here and it'll insert it. at the bottom. We're not really going to use any of those at this point. Um, let's just cancel and get out of that. I'm going to close the navigation pane as well. So we're back to our document. So with pictures, if you look on page 13, many of you have experienced some frustration trying to insert pictures into documents, web pages, what have you, emails, because they don't do exactly what you want them to do. Super common. So if you're frustrated, just know that you're in a very large group. That's clearly the majority that don't understand how these things behave. So if you look on page 13, there are at the bottom, if you look through those type of wrapping, so what that refers to is how the text and the pictures work together. And it's not always the same, but you can control it within Word. And if you look at the top of page 4-13, you can see the difference between an inline object and a floating object. So many times what happens is you wind up with an inline object because it takes up this weird space, and you want to use a floating object. Okay, so they're kind of a fundamentally different thing there. You can look, for other examples of this, but I don't want to get too crazy with this. All I want you to know is that there's different ways to format images. And if you go down to the bottom of page 13, that's where the specifics of those things happen. So you could probably understand if I told you to put an image in front of the text, that then you might not be able to see the text because the image would be blocking it. If I put the image behind the text, it's possible that the text might be blocking the image. Now, there are some gray areas here. So if you put a partially transparent image in front of text, you still might be able to read the text. If you put a partially transparent image behind or in front of or behind the text, it would potentially allow you to see both. Might look messy though. Just depends upon the image and what you're trying to accomplish. Okay, so kind of keep those items in figure 4-9 on page 4-13 in mind. Each one of those types of wrapping has a special menu icon associated with it that you can see there. You don't need to memorize these. You can simply use your insertion point, hover over these, and you can see what they are while you're doing your work. So 4-15, let's just kind of get busy with this because I think getting your hands dirty is probably a little more helpful. 4-15, we want to scroll up to the top of page 1. So top of page 1. And click anywhere in the paragraph, happy birthday. Okay, so I'm in happy birthday heading. We want to change the zoom level. So go to view, go to multiple pages. On the ribbon, click the insert tab now. And we want to insert a text box. Okay. So I'm going to insert, and the text box is going to be located over here. When you click on the arrow at the bottom of the text box, it gives you a bunch of styles. We're looking for the Ion sidebar. So scroll down a little bit. Looks like they're alphabetized. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. Ion sidebar. Ion sidebar 1. Okay, so that's the one that I'm looking for here. Ion sidebar 1. And the text box, when I click on it, just gets stuck over there. If you look on page 4-16, don't freak out because theirs looks exactly like yours. And you can also see that it messes up those top 2 lines. So that blue bar now looks really messy. Things are kind of screwed up. And so what we're going to do is one of two things. You can come up here to the size, so notice that you're now in the shape format, in the size specifications, and it gives you some shape height 4-3, so you can do it this way, so 4.3, and then the bottom one, so the shape width is going to be 1.5, and press enter. And so now we've got a slightly better shape here, but it's still not in the right spot. Okay? So we're going to zoom back in a little bit more, just so we can kind of see more specifically what we're dealing with. And this time, in the Arrange group, so let's find the Arrange group. So Arrange group, I'm in shape format. Arrange group is located here. And we want to find the Align button. So the Align button is there. And we want to turn on the Use Alignment Guides. And ours is already on, okay? Or at least the one on mine. If you don't have a check mark here, make sure that there's a check mark there. So you can click anywhere, but that might alter what you've selected. So I would suggest using Escape, the ESC key at the top left of your keyboard. So now step 10 says position your mouse pointer somewhere over the text box border. And so you can see I've got an arrow on my screen. As I bring it down, it turns into a 4-way arrow. So that means we've completed step 10, but keep that 4-way arrow there. And we want to click and hold, and then move that guy back down. And you can see that there's a small green line that shows up to the right and on the left. And then I'm going to keep going down. And if I went down a little bit more, look what happened. Everything shifted back. Boom. Okay. So really, we want to be somewhere in this neck of the woods. You can look at the image on page 17. Somewhere in there is probably fine. But most importantly, we want the left edge of the horizontal blue bar to line up with the left edge of this sidebar. And if you look in the picture of that book, they are showing that very specifically. So again, you see that green line that shows up once I click on it. Okay, all right. I think that's looking pretty good. There, if you flip over to page 18, 4-18, they bring their sidebar down a little bit. I kind of like it being a little higher. I think that visually it seems more balanced that way. Pick your poison. This is where it's art and not science. I'm not going to take off for either of those. The only thing that you need to make sure of is that things are laying out similarly to what you see on the screen here. Okay, so we're going to change our zoom a little bit just so we can see a bit more of the document, and that's probably good. And in fact, I'm going to go the other way just a little bit. Okay, so I can see a lot of the document up and down here, and you can kind of see where the bottom of that text box falls, and it's similar to what's in the book. Okay. So we want to click on the Layout Options button, okay? And that is this little kind of upside down moon or whatever. That's the Layout Options button. So if I hover over top of that, I can see that we've got some choices here. And it shows me what's currently selected. And so if I go over here, it's using a square text wrapping, and it's fixed the position on the page, okay? And that's exactly what's happened in the image on page 4-18. Okay, so you can click anywhere But what we really are looking for is the in front of text. And while it seems like that might not be an intuitive choice, okay, so this is top and bottom, that's behind, and that's in front of text. We're not actually going to put the sidebar underneath of anything. We just wanted to let that text get back. So if you notice just behind here, we want to let that text to the right of it go back into its natural position. And everything else should stay the same. So leave the fixed position. Make sure that you've got the in front of text selected, and then you can click the X. And now notice everything lines up real nicely. Okay, so we've got our sidebar selected, and we want to go to the Drawing Tools Format tab, and so shape format, I guess is what we're talking about. In the Arrange group, we want to click on the Wrap Text. So this is the Arrange group. Here's the Wrap Text, and we're looking to make sure that the fixed position on page is highlighted, and it is. Okay, it's chosen there, and it's highlighted up here. Okay, so you can see a checkbox. And we can click anywhere in the document, and now we can kind of see where things are going to show up. If you want to see what it looks like without the show hide marks on, you can do that, but I leave those show hide marks on. So now we're going to put some text in here. So step 2 at the bottom of page 19, it says to click the placeholder text sidebar title once. And now we want to type the words operating hours in there. And we're going to click one time on the text beneath that now. That's on step 3, page 19. And if you float over to page 20, you can see that my screen looks exactly like the picture on page 20. We're going to press the delete key on your keyboard to get rid of that. That's step 4 on page 20. On the ribbon, click the Insert tab, so make sure it's blinking in there. Go to the Insert tab in the ribbon. We want to find the text group over here on the right. And in the text group, we're looking for the object arrow. So not the word object, the arrow to the right of it. And then we're looking for text from file. And if we click on text from file, step 7 says to go find this document called support hours. Okay, so there's my support hours. Okay, support WD4 hours. And then at the bottom of that, you can click insert. And notice what happened. It made the text from the document that we found show up in your text box because we had that, our insertion point in the text box. So you didn't have to go type all that. That's pretty handy, especially if you're doing multiple things with the same kind of chunks of text. So you don't have to retype it all over and over and over, and you can be sure that you're using the exact same thing. So now notice at the very bottom here, let me zoom in so you can see this. There's a kind of a hanging paragraph there. So we're just going to backspace just to get rid of that thing because we don't really need that there. And on the ribbon, we're going to click the Home tab. And step 10, lots of times people miss this one, but we want to make sure that we have all of this text selected in this sidebar. And we want to match it up with the same size we have in the rest of our document, which is size 12, I believe. No, we need to make it 11. Okay. And if you're unsure, if you click over in your document somewhere in this area, you could see that this is 11. And then if we click back over here, we've made this into size 11. Okay. But again, you got to make sure that you highlight all of that in order for that to occur. So I'm going to save my work, flip over, check page 21, make sure that all looks good. Go to page 22. We're going to draw and format a text box this time. So this is kind of a manual way to create text boxes. And this is generally what I would do. I would make my text box the size that I wanted to. So step 1, page 22, scroll down to display the bottom of page 1. I'm going to zoom a little bit just so this works pretty good. Go to the Insert tab in the ribbon. Now this time we're not going to the text box, we're going to the shapes. Okay, so we're looking for the shapes. And it says it's in the illustrations group, which is right here. So notice shapes. So this is not very intuitive. Okay, so read carefully because most of these are just shapes, but some of them will, one or more will allow you to be able to do text inside of it. So if you get down to this basic shapes, the first one says text box, which is kind of funny. You can also see in the recent shapes, but we're just going to click on that and we get a kind of a marker, a little plus sign that shows up. So if you remember what this is going to look like, we're going to go, let's just go to the bottom of the page, kind of draw up and make it look something like this. You could see in the book where on page 23, it's kind of giving you a basic size for this. We could make this look exactly like the one up above by fiddling around with it, but step 6 on page 23, it's kind of giving you a little cheater way to go. So the height is going to be, it says 2.5, and the width, if you remember from the previous text box, is going to be 1.5. And there we have a text box, and we need to shift that down just a little bit so it more lines up with the bottom of your document. So you kind of want these two things to line up. Get out of there. So this last line kind of lines up with the bottom of your text box. Okay. And we'll just kind of adjust this to make it look good. But step 7 says definitely get those two lines squared up. Bottom of page 23. We want to copy text from the newsletter and paste it into the text box. So this time we're not going to get it from another file. We're going to get it from our newsletter itself. So step 1 on page 23 says select the third sentence after getting around town heading. So third sentence. Okay, 1, 2, 3. And it says the complete schedule. Okay, so we want to highlight this. The complete schedule is not yet final. Blah, 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 blah. And it says, get the entire sentence. I'll get the period as well. And I've highlighted it. I'm going to press Control C. I could also copy it up here. Okay, copy. And now it tells you in step 2, click in the blank box. Okay, now I'm in the blank box. And you can use Control V to paste, or you could paste from the menu up above. So now you can see that we've got the same exact sentence from one side to the other. Okay, so if I click to see what the text size is, it's 11, which is correct, and it's 11 over here as well. Flip over to page 24. This is, grammar stuff. So if we're pulling a quote out of our document, we should probably make sure that the reader knows that that quote has been pulled. Okay? And I believe that's what that's technically called, is a pull quote. So yeah, it actually says that in step 3. On step 4, it says, On the ribbon, click the Drawing Tools Format tab, and it's actually going to be the shape format is what they're calling it now. Or at least in my version, it might be the Drawing Tools Format tab. In the text group, so we want to find that text group again, and that's going to be in the center here. Click the Align Text, and we want this to be in the middle, and that way it's balanced top to bottom. And you can kind of see how this is going to line up, what it's looking like at this point, and it actually looks pretty good. So we're going to style this text over here though. So step 7, it says go to the styles, shape styles group, and click on more. Okay, so shape styles is actually over here. It is not the word art. Okay, they're two different things. So we want to pick, well, pick whichever one you want, but the one that they're telling us to find, position the pointer over colored fill blue accent 5, which is a dark blue box, second from the right in the second row. Colored fill blue accent 5. You could pick whatever you want, but just make sure that your document looks good. So notice when we picked that shape style, it did a font reversal. So it flipped the font to white and changed the background to blue. And that's important for you to know, because if you just made the background blue, then your text is going to stay black. Shape Styles does a little bit of that work for you. Let's see. First, step 1, kind of in the middle of page 25. We want to fix the text box's position, and then notice that there's an anchor symbol in our document. So make sure that the text box is still selected, okay? And you've got a drawing tools or shape format menu. In the Arrange group, we want to click on the Wrap Text, okay? And you can see that there is a check mark next to the Move with Text because that's just the default. We're going to click on Fix Position on Page, okay? So we want it to stay where it is. Otherwise, if as you adjusted or reformatted things, things might begin to have a mind of their own, or so it might seem. So fixing this image on the page is going to prevent you from going kind of bananas. So next thing they want us to do in step 4 is to triple click the paragraph below Getting Around Town. Okay, so that's the whole paragraph. I triple clicked, it highlighted the whole paragraph, and then notice that the text box that we created also gets selected. And if it says in step 4, not only if you deleted this whole thing, the thing that you highlighted would get deleted as well as that text box. Okay? All right. So you could also do it this way. So if you clicked and dragged and didn't get everything, notice that the whole text box is not highlighted. So we could get everything but first letter, it's not highlighted. Now it is. Okay. Bottom of page 25, insert another pre-formatted text box. So this time we're going to go scroll down to the top of page 2. So here's page 2. And again, you can zoom, get that bird's eye view if you're unsure what is what. So here's page 1, here's page 2. I'm at the top of page 2 in the first line. Okay, so I'm going to click somewhere in the first line. And now in the ribbon, click the Insert tab. And in the text group, so find the text group in the middle, or nope, on the right. And we want to click on text box, and this time we're just going to do that ion sidebar again. Ion sidebar, grid sidebar. Oh, so many choices. Ion sidebar 1. And it just wrecks the document. Isn't that crazy? Okay, so step 4, it says click on the text box border where you have that 4-way arrow. Okay, and you could move that around now, but they're suggesting that we go over to the layout options button, click on that, and then click in front of the text again like we did with that first one. And then make sure that it's got a selection in that fixed position on page. Okay. We could move it over now if we wanted to, or we can change the size. And again, you can use those little drag handles to do this as well. When you're working with multiple images like this and you want them to be exactly the same, and in this case definitely the width, we want to use the sizing tool. Now that we've got it in the proper size, notice my little drag handles here, or my dragging shows the green, and that looks pretty good right there. I'm kind of looking to make sure that the left-hand side of the sidebar title actually matches up with the left-hand side of my classics in audio form. That stands out a bit when you're designing. It doesn't really matter if you're not using colors as much, but once you introduce those color borders, yeah, things become really obvious to the naked eye. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. And flipping over to page 26, in the title bar, replace the placeholder text. So we just click one time, and we type book festival reminder. And then in the main text box, click one time, press delete. Okay. On the ribbon, insert tab. Remember the object arrow, not the word object. And also, again, text from a file. But this time we're going to use the support festival. And insert that. So the problem now is that we've got this extra paragraph mark, so we want to click there. Press the back, get rid of that. Okay, so we've got rid of it. And then the last thing we want to do is change this text to 11 point. Excuse me. So we go back to the Home tab and change that to 11. So it all matches up with the text size in the rest of the document. And let's save our work. And the last step for this section, there's more to the document, but the last step in this section is going to be to insert drop caps on page 27. So a drop cap, you've probably seen this in magazines, some websites do stuff like this. It's basically fancying the beginning of a paragraph. So if you go all the way up to the top of page 1 and click anywhere in the paragraph below happy birthday. So that first line says it's time to celebrate 75. That's where I want to go. On the ribbon, click the Insert tab. In the text group, over on the right-hand side here, we're going to choose Add a Drop Cap. Okay. And Drop Cap Gallery. I mean, it's not like tons of stuff here. But we want to go to the, let's see. If you hover over top of those two things, you can see what they're going to look like. Don't click on either one of those things though. Go down here to the options. Then you can see all of your choices. So we're going to be using the dropped option, not in the margin. You can see the difference there. And then in the lines to drop, we want to change that to the number 2. So by default, it shows up as 3. We want this to be a 2, and then choose OK. And notice that it turns it into basically an image. Okay. And we're going to do this again. It says in step 8 to go near the bottom of page 1, and then find, insert a similar drop cap in the paragraph following a fond farewell. So we want to do the same thing here. So if we go back up to drop cap options, dropped, and then we'll reduce that to 2 and choose it. Whoa, I went the wrong way. Whoops. Drop cap options, dropped, 2, OK. So now it's the same, and then we'll do it one more time on page 2. Notice we're not really doing all the paragraphs, but you could. On page 2, we want to go, heard any good books lately, go below that one. Did you know? Do the same thing. Let's see if we can use the repeat formatting, and look at that. Okay, so use your skills. So if you don't like clicking around, use the repeat. And we're going to save this. So that's the end of this first section, and then we'll have a second part for the rest of the image insertions and formatting those 3 columns there. So stay tuned, take a break. That's a lot of stuff we've done here, but and again, keep in mind that as you move into more of this designing, you might want to consider using an actual design tool. Word is not really a design tool. It's not designed to do this sort of thing purposefully. It's just been added in. All right, stay tuned for part 2.